Where were you? Where? Oh, damn it, Jerry. So, but you do this thing very well. You must consider a career.
Good morning, colleagues. Can we settle down? Colleagues, let me take this opportunity to welcome you, but Dr. Solomon will be doing the official opening and welcome. My name is Buitumelo Modene. I am from the DPSA as the ethics officer. Just as we start, let me take this opportunity and remind you, colleagues, as ethics officers, to say the role that you are currently playing. It's a very critical role, which is very important. You decided to go beyond your call of duty to do the duties that you are often not even comfortable of carrying out. And as the government, we will not be able to achieve our mission and vision of having a capable and ethical state. But your contribution will definitely assist us to reach that level. On that note, give yourself a Batupili lab, the new Batupili lab. Okay, let me lead you. Can we try again? 3, 2, 1. That's someone, but we'll get it right during the day. Over to you, Dr. Solomon.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. No, let's try again. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. As with all events, we first have to start with a more formal part. So I would like to welcome the Honorable Minister Joyce Chitsulu and delegation members, including Minister DG, Mr. Michael Chusiwa and his delegation. Also, a welcome in absentia to Honorable Mr. Chris Cooter, the High Commissioner of Canada, and also the representatives of the Canadian government. Then also to Professor Dion Rousseau, the CEO of the Ethics Institute, and his colleagues or his team. Also a warm welcome to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime and the United Nations Development Program. DG Yoliswa Makasi from the DPSA, welcome. Senior government officials, ethics officers, all protocol observed. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the National Ethics Officer Forum, and especially the first part of this forum, which is the launch of the Public Service Ethics Survey. Now, this week forms part of the Public Service Month, and it's hosted by TAO, as it's known. to provide the public and the ethics officers with an opportunity to reflect on our ethics management program. It is significant that we have a full week set aside for ethics, as it shows our commitment as the DPSA to ethics management. It's also important as we need to look at ethics if we want to successfully root out corruption. Because as Advocate Batoyi, the NDPP, yesterday said during the launch of the local government anti-corruption strategy, one cannot investigate and prosecute you out of corruption. And that is a very profound statement that she made, because the only way that you can do that is actually through ethics management and institutionalizing ethics. Ethics is needed for all the work that we do, the projects, the ideas, the innovation, everything that we've been talking about since the beginning of this month. For example, if you want the revised and revitalized Batupile strategy to take flight, we need to have an ethical public service with employees who have ethics and integrity. Similarly, if we want to address service delivery, we need to look at improving ethics in the public service. And the same goes for fighting corruption. Ladies and gentlemen, today is the 7th National Ethics Officer Forum that we are hosting as the DPSA. The first one we held in 2015, and we only missed one due to COVID. And that was really when we couldn't move it anymore. So, as said, ethics officers, you here in front of us, you the most important people for me in the public service. And this forum is an important event in the ethics management calendar of government. It's the only time really that we as ethics officers have time and opportunity to network, to share best practice, and also to be exposed to new developments and expectations, and to receive some technical assistance. If one considers that you are actually doing this as an over and above function, it's even more important for us to get together once a year. Ethics officers, the footprint of the TAO in departments, and as such, you are actually directly responsible to drive the ethics program of government. You are also the ones responsible to institutionalize ethics in departments and to entrench values supporting service delivery so that corruption cannot take root. Today, we have 159 ethics officers in 41 national departments, and even in 2 government components, which it's not an obligation. We have 325 ethics officers in 113 provincial departments. Only one short. Then ethics management function is overseen by ethics committees, and currently we have around 74 ethics committees, and they have the task to perform ethics oversight over the ethics officers, so that we have that independent eye looking at ethics officers as well. Now, ethics officers are responsible to implement the norms and standards that we as the unit set. And through monthly and quarterly monitoring and evaluation, you do your own progress determination to see whether you have reached implementation. But I must say, through the work of you, the ethics officers, we can boast with a 98% compliance rate for the e-disclosure system, where SMS members disclose their finances for the past 4 or 5 years. We can also boast that the departments are starting one by one to capture the other remunerative work process, which did not happen a few years ago. And also that we have lifestyle reviews being conducted in national departments. Just more than half of all national departments embarked on a lifestyle audit review process, which is remarkable for the first year. Provinces, we're still far, 17%. But we can also boast that gifts are managed properly, and it's no longer an issue in government as it was at least 5 years ago. Now, these activities are actually the practical steps that you take to ensure that an ethical culture is created in those departments where you are the ethics officers. A culture that would promote doing right, what is right at all times, and speaking out when things are wrong and it's observed to be wrong. Now, to assist ethics officers and to provide them with the fresh perspectives and knowledge, This 7th National Ethics Officer Forum over the next 2 days will focus first of all on financial disclosure form verification, which will be done by the Public Service Commission, and also on other remunerative work, conflicts of interests, and the conducting of lifestyle audits, to just name a few. There will also be the sharing of best practice with the Department of Communication and Digital Technologies and the Gauteng Department of Agriculture that is sharing their successes of establishing fully effective ethics committees, because that is one area where we really still need to do a lot of work around. The highlight for me is the finalization of the Conflicts of Interest Guide, covering recruitment, supply chain management, and finances, amongst other things. Now, ladies and gentlemen, on Monday, during the launch of the Ethics Week, we outlined the successes of TAU over the past 2 years since being established. And if it wasn't for the support we received over this past few years from friends like the Ethics Institute and the Canadian government via the Strengthening Ethics and Integrity programs set up to assist this unit in doing their work, we would not have the successes that we have achieved so far. In 2015, the Ethics Institute contacted DPSA and offered us to conduct an ethics survey across the 3 spheres of government. Now, this was the beginning of a long-term relationship, with the 3rd iteration of that report conducted at the end of February 2022. The survey, which is funded by the Ethics Institute, aims to assess the ethics climate in national departments, provincial departments, and the local government. The 2015 survey was of such an importance to us as the DPSA because it was instrumental in reviewing our code of conduct. We could actually review it based on scientific data, not thumbsuck, where we actually then had the opportunity to introduce the whole concept of ethics officers in the code of conduct. We could introduce the concept of ethics committees. We could outline the work that ethics officer would be responsible for, so that that is now legislated. And also we could look at the work of the heads of department around ethics functions and anti-corruption functions, and make it obligatory for public servants to report when they see that there's unethical conduct, that there's corruption or non-compliance with legislation. So, Professor Rousseau, I welcome you and your team, and I want to express my sincere appreciation for your constant support and for the feedback that your team will provide us with this morning on the outcome of the 2021 survey. The other close partners of TAU that I would like to welcome is the representatives of the Canadian government. Please convey my sincere appreciation to Mr. Chris Cooper, the High Commissioner for Canada, who in absentia today will also deliver a remote address to us, especially for strengthening the ethics integrity program to contribute to the effective and efficient functioning of TAU through various support initiatives. And among them are continuous support to roll out technical assistance programs for the ethics officers to make your work easier. And I'm thinking, yes, in the line of training material on discipline management, lifestyle audits, establishing a Moodle platform that you will hear a bit later about, which improve communication with the ethics officers, and where we could post the frequently asked questions and those type of things to assist you, but also by improving discipline management, by performing research on backlogs, and for assisting us with developing this conflict of interest guide, which is actually the first of its kind for South Africa, which is actually a much needed guide, and it's interdisciplinary, not only looking at the work that the DPSA is doing. So when we indicated that the survey could not be conducted last year in 2021 due to a lack of funds, it was also the Canadian government that stood up and said they will fund the survey. So, honored guests, I would also like to welcome the delegation of Minister Chitsulu from Malawi, and also to the National Ethics Officer Forum. Although the delegation initially intended to only undertake a study tour on South Africa's implementation of the e-disclosure system, upon learning about the Ethics Week and particularly the Ethics Officer Forum, the Minister expressed an interest to attend all of the events for the week. And I'm also want to extend a warm welcome to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime and the UN Development Program members who are accompanying the Malawian delegation, particularly for trusting us in the way that we do management of financial interests and recommending that we assist our Malawian counterparts in training and showcasing what we do. Minister Chitsulu, we cherish our newfound relationship and we're looking forward to build this relationship to even closer ties so that we can start as countries sharing knowledge on issues of ethics and corruption. Lastly, but not least, ethics officers, you all welcome, warm welcome to each of you to this 7th National Ethics Officer Forum, but also to the launch of the ethics survey, which would be the first part of the National Ethics Officer Forum. And let me reiterate that your role in turning this ship around to have good governance cannot be stressed enough. We have decided to start our National Ethics Officer Forum with the launch of the Public Sector Ethics Survey, as this will set the tone for what we want to achieve with the forum and to assess if we are on course with turning the ship around. Because as in the past, the survey will indicate if we as government are on track with implementing our ethics program. We can actually consider this results to be a scorecard for the work that we've been doing over the last 3 years as ethics officers. So ethics officers, I don't need to remind you, but you know, if we want to advance ethics in government, we need to have ethics officers who are committed to their work. That we need. And as the Deputy Minister said on Monday, and the DG DPSA constantly said before, we are aware of the challenges experienced by ethics officers, especially about the issue of being delegated and not appointed. And we are committed to finding a solution to this. To close, I encourage you all to enjoy the next 2 days and to learn, and also to provide your perspectives so that we all can learn from one another. Thank you.
Colleagues, that is not the correct clap. Let's try that Batupili clap again. 3. Well done. That's my ethics officers that I belong to. Let me take this opportunity, colleagues. Thank you, Dr. Solomon, for the message. Let me take this opportunity now to call upon the message from the High Commissioner of Canada. Koliso, you'll prepare the message for us. The High Commissioner will present the message virtually, and I believe the ethics officers will benefit a lot from this message. Thank you.
Program Director DG McCasey of the Public Service and Administration Department, Director General Williamson of the Department of Cooperative Governance, Head of the Ethics Institute, Professor Rousseau, Chief Director of the unit, Dr. Lugaran Velamak, honorable guests, government partners, officials from the DPSA and other government departments, greetings. Bonjour, Sani Banani Dumalan. Happy Public Service Month to you all. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to offer Canada's message of support. Last year, I had the pleasure of participating in the official launch of the Public Administration Ethics, Integrity and Disciplinary Technical Assistance Unit. Today again, I'm honored to be part of this much anticipated launch of the Public Sector Ethics Survey Report for 2022, which is happening as part of the celebration of Public Service Month. We indeed have come a long way, and Canada is proud of being part of this collaboration. Congratulations in particular to the Department of Public Service and Administration, our principal partner from the Strengthening Ethics and Integrity Project. It has been spearheading this process through the Ethics Institute. Well, as you know, over the last year, South Africa has made important strides to end state capture and to fight corruption. That said, we do acknowledge that there is a large amount of work remaining, including to strengthen the capacity for effective efforts. Canada applauds your commitment to tackle this crucial issue. We believe the survey, this new tool, is one of the key turnaround mechanisms in the campaign to strengthen ethics and integrity in the public service. It's a tool vital to the measurement of the ethics climate in public administration and essential for the strategic processes that will follow from that. Importantly, this tool will assist in identifying gaps that have to be addressed through training and through other interventions. I would be remiss if I do not mention Canada's great satisfaction with the fact that for the first time, this national survey has reached not only thousands of employees, but has also been able to collect information on gender and inclusion. This is a major milestone towards mainstreaming gender into the project, a development that will support its long-term and its sustainable impact. And allow me also to compliment DPSA leadership and staff, the unit team in particular, as well as our implementing partner, Cowater Sogema International, the Ethics Institute, the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Authorities, and all the other partners for the work that you have been doing behind the scenes to make this launch a success attributable to your determination to ensure public ethics are a priority. Well done. Let me conclude by reassuring you that you are not alone in your work. Canada is here to support your efforts, both through this unit and more broadly. All the best in implementing the findings and the recommendations from the survey. Congratulations, félicitations.
Thank you, colleagues. Before I call on Professor Rousseau, the head of the Ethics Institute, let me also remind you that ethics is the opportunity to be embraced, to unlock the human potential. So the contribution that you're making at your individual level really add value to our public service, and it will definitely assist us to unlock that human potential. Over to you, Professor Rousseau.
Good morning, and thank you, Program Director, Honorable Minister, the DG of DPSA, other dignitaries represented here, and then a very special word of welcome to our ethics officers. Great to see so many familiar faces here this morning, and also to the delegation of Malawi. I'm glad to also see you here in the audience this morning. Dr. Hooggenraad Vermaak mentioned that the history of the Public Sector Ethics Survey goes back to 2015 when we first conducted it. But I would just like to emphasize right at the beginning that this would not have been possible without the collaboration from DPSA. So Solomon, thank you also to you and your team over the 3 rounds of the survey, as well as Kokta and Salga, who also assisted us in conducting this. My job is just to provide you with some background and a short introduction to the Public Sector Ethics Survey, after which my colleagues, Chris Doby and Fatima Rawat, will share the findings with you. So why are we as the Ethics Institute involved in this survey? Well, our mission is the enabling and supporting of the cultivation of ethical organizations. In other words, we see our job as assisting organizations in building ethical cultures. And as part of that mission of ours, there are various things that we do. The one that you probably would be most familiar with is our Ethics Officer Certification Program, because in front of me is quite a number of certified ethics officers, and also behind me on the podium. That is a program that we already introduced in 2004 for the first time. As we speak, we are presenting the 141st edition of that program. Over these 18 years, we've trained more than 2,200 ethics officers on the program. We presented the program physically in 8 different countries, including 3 times in Malawi. And over the same period, we had people from 27 countries, not only across Africa, but also the Middle East, Europe, and North America also attending the program. So in that sense, I think many of you would be quite familiar with this program. But Another important part of our work is to conduct all types of ethics assessments. We do conduct ethics behavior risk assessments, ethics management maturity assessments, ethical culture maturity assessments, among others. And we do so in both the private and the public sector. We started our private sector surveys already in 2002, and roughly every third year we produce a new report. And those surveys in the public sector focus mainly on two things. The first one is ethical culture, and the second aspect is reporting behavior. In other words, when people observe unethical conduct, what do they do about it? Do they report it or don't they? And if not, why? But then, as we've already said now, we started a similar process also every third year in the public sector. And we do so in close collaboration with the DPSA, COGTA, and SALGA. And there the focus is on three components. We look at ethics management, we look at ethical conduct in the public sector on all three levels of government, but we also look at ethical culture. And what we have witnessed over the last 5 to 6 years is quite a dramatic increase in the demand for these risk assessments and also the management and culture assessments, which leads one to speculate, why is there currently a greater need in the market for assessments like, for example, the Public Service Ethics Survey? And I think if one speculates, there are a number of reasons that come to mind. I think on a global scale, we can see a shift beyond ethics awareness and compliance to ethical conduct and culture. I think there's a realization that although people might be aware of ethical standards, does not mean that it will translate into ethical conduct. And compliance can only bring us that far. It can't take us all the way. We need to get our ethics into our culture. And by culture, I mean the way we do things even when nobody is watching. In other words, the ethical habits that we cultivate in our organizations. I think another contributing factor was the King reports on corporate governance. If we look at King 3, there was a principle that said the board should ensure that the company's ethics is managed effectively. So the emphasis was on, do we manage ethics? Do we have a code? Do we have training on ethics? Do we provide a whistleblowing system? And that was fairly simple to tick those boxes. But King 4, that came out in 2016, the fourth King report on corporate governance for South Africa, the principle along the same line said that the governing body should govern the ethics of the organization in a way that supports the establishment of an ethical culture. You can see once more a shift away from, can we tick the boxes? We have a code, we provide training, we offer a whistleblowing line, to, do we govern and manage ethics in a way that leads to a change in conduct and ultimately a change in culture? And then also, I think the public service regulations of 2016 also put that proactive element into the job of ethics officers by saying that the ethics officer responsibility include the promotion of integrity, in other words, character development and ethical behavior. So once again, you can see how we are stretching it all the way away from just ticking boxes to changing character and changing conduct. And I think that is the reason why there is a bigger demand for all types of ethical conduct and culture assessments. Now, one would have expected, and I think we all would have been glad if that is the case, if there is a direct or linear correlation between ethics management, ethical conduct, and ethical culture. In other words, if you do proper ethics management, it will result in improved conduct and ultimately mature the ethical culture of your organization. And very often it's the case. But sometimes it's not the case. sometimes your ethical management style can lead to improvement in conduct without changing the culture. And that is something that I think we should all be very aware of. We've analyzed our data that we collected over the years, and we saw that there isn't a direct correlation. Especially if we rely on very strict compliance regimes in our ethics management. We might have an improvement in our ethics management. We might see less unethical behavior without changing the culture, because people haven't internalized the ethics of the organization. So therefore, I think a big challenge for us, and also when you listen to the findings that will be presented to you in a moment, to also listen from the perspective of what can we do to not only improve ethics management, but also ethical conduct, as well as the culture, because the culture is the lasting thing. That is the thing that most probably will survive all our management attempts. So as Solomon also said, from the Ethics Institute side, also from the DPSA side, I believe, it is important that we always base our ethics interventions on research-based evidence, that we should not thumbsuck, but that we should use proper information. And I think what you will hear in a moment is information that might assist you in reflecting on your ethics management style, that hopefully will inform your design of ethics strategies for your organizations, that will help you to ensure that your ethical standards are aligned to the profile, the ethics risk profile and culture profile that you will see, but also to stimulate your imagination in terms of designing new proactive and reactive ethics interventions in your organizations, and ultimately to change the ethical culture. I trust that you will find a lot of value in these results, and best wishes with your job. We are hoping to repeat this study soon, and we hope that the inputs that we receive from this survey will also positively influence the next survey that we hopefully will conduct in 2024. Thank you.
Let's try the Batubili clap. Thank you so much, ethics officers. And thank you so much, Professor Rousseau, for the message. And what came into my mind while Prof was presenting here was the aspect of the intrinsic motivation versus the extrinsic motivation, meaning how we implement ethics. Is it proactive? Is it compliance driven? Because the way we implement it will change the culture. And your contribution, again, colleagues, as the ethics officer, remember, being ethical or ethics is doing something when no one is watching, and also you are driven mainly by the internal convictions. So it means as ethics officers, in your day-to-day contributions on doing your work, you are driven by the internal motivation, and we thank you for that, because you are doing that, majority of you are doing that over and above your appointed duties. Thank you for that. I'll hand over now to Chris and Ms. Fatima for them to take us through the presentation on the ethics survey.
Hi, colleagues. I haven't swallowed Fatima. She's going to assist us tomorrow, so I'll present on the findings. But Fatima, where are you? There she is. So we'll tomorrow facilitate a session with it. Dear Minister, DG, ethics officers, a delegation from Malawi, Canadian delegation, for the opportunity for being here. And thanks to the DPSA for the opportunity to conduct this ethics survey. We, like Dion indicated, we try to do the survey every 3 years. But if the Ethics Institute did a survey without partnering with the DPSA, firstly, we wouldn't have the reach, we wouldn't get the amount of respondents. And we don't want to do a survey just to point out gaps or things. We want that data to be useful. And in fact, the first time we did the survey, we said, we don't even expect this data to be published. We just want you to use it as an organization, as a public service to improve ethics management. And I'm very glad that has in fact happened and gained traction. So yeah, giving you the results of the public sector ethics survey, as was mentioned in conjunction with DPSA, COGTA and SALGA. And I saw Elphys here as well. Elphys, thank you very much from the COGTA perspective as well. There you can see this is the third iteration. We started in 2021, finished in 2022. 8,800 respondents, colleagues. If you have any idea about surveys, that's a very large sample. That really goes a long way. You can see there's a lot in Gauteng, KZN, so provincial government forming the greatest part, then national government, then local government. So it gives us a very good sense of public service ethics and progress there. We do the behavior. So that's conduct that Dion was referring to. We try and get a sense of what behaviors are frequently occurring in the public administration. Then ethical culture. How supportive is the environment for us to do the right thing? And then lastly, ethics management. How are we progressing with the management of ethics in the organizations? So the first one I want to focus on is ethical behavior risk. And there we ask people the question, to what extent do you think the following occurs in your organization on a scale from never to very frequently? So in other words, if people say never, then it's a very low occurrence, and you can see there low risk is the green. So that's when people say, we don't think it really happens. And severe risk is the 67 to 100, where people say, we think this happens a lot. So you can see where the risk category that we fall in there, in a lot of the top risks are in the high risk category, so 50 to 66%. And the issues that come out top, and I apologize if at the back you can't see, I'll read a little bit of those, but the one at the top, inconsistency in the application of discipline. Okay, so people saying, and it's at about 57, so roughly, it's not quite what we measure, but because we're on a sliding scale, but roughly we can say 57% of people think that they don't really agree with that statement, or that rather that happens frequently in the public service. Inconsistency in the application of discipline. Secondly, victimization of employees who differ with management. So I want us to quickly go, well, let me first do one more. The abuse of time is the third one. If we go to our CLAP, our Batho-Pele principles, which really I like a lot, I think it's a way to, again, get this thing of Batho-Pele, which has been with us for a long time, and to try and improve the uptake of that. I like that. But we belong. Now, if you say that people are victimized when they differ with managers, that's not a sense of belonging, okay? We serve. The abuse of time doesn't mean that we serve. Also doesn't necessarily mean that we care. But what I want to point out, colleagues, is that the responses here are from public servants like yourselves. So public servants like yourselves are saying they are frustrated with these things as much as the next guy. Okay. So inconsistency in the application of rules and discipline. victimization of employees who differ with managers, abuse of time. Then we've got no consequences for unethical behavior, so the accountability side. Then the appointment side, getting the right people in, incompetent or unqualified people being appointed, abuse of cadre deployment. Frequently from our qualitative assessments and also from the comments that we get, the abuse of cadre deployment and the incompetent appointments go hand in hand frequently. People being at work but not working, abuse of resources for personal matters. So those are the types of things that we see. So my analysis is you sort of try and get a sense of what's causal. I don't think abuse of time is causal. Once we get to abuse of time, we can already say, but the culture has degraded. People aren't applying themselves as much as they can apply themselves, as much as they should apply themselves, because they feel a little bit disconnected with the work. They don't feel appreciated. They don't feel that the best people are promoted, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. On the positive side, so I'm going to go down to the lower end there when we're in the green. So we don't have such high levels, I think, as we thought. This is the first, well, sextortion and sexual harassment. But if you think about, we are 22 there. So about 2 out of every 10 people say that there is sexual harassment and sextortion in the workplace. So keeping that in mind, that's not a low number. It is problematic. But yeah, it's luckily it's not in the severe risk category or the high risk category. The other thing there that's quite low, inappropriate acceptance of gifts. So just keep in mind that we spend a lot of time on gift management and the like. It seems to be having some kind of effect. People say that inappropriate acceptance of gifts is not that high. All right, so how has this progressed over the years? If we look at our averages there, in 2015, we were at 47, 2018, 52, so it went up a bit there. And 2022, we seem to be going down in a positive direction. So a lower score is more positive. So 6-point difference there from 2022 2018 to 2022. So 6-point more positive difference there. So that's in terms of ethical behavior. When we compare this, and these are always to me very interesting stats, the unqualified audit, so organizations with an unqualified audit versus organizations with a qualified or disclaimer audit. We see there that the top thing that people differ on is giving contracts to family or friends or connected individuals. So now we're seeing that with unqualified audits, there's a lot higher percentage of people who say we see contracts being given to the wrong people. We see staff receiving bribes and kickbacks. We see political interference, disrespectful treatment of the public, and not adhering to policies and procedures. All right, so all of those things, very interesting, the differences there between organizations where it's going better and going worse. The next section that I want us to look at is the ethical culture section. And here we said to people, to what extent do you agree with the following positive statement? And obviously, if people agree more with that statement, it's more positive. So we say leadership supports ethical culture. So if they agree more, it's a more positive finding. So low risk is high agreement, and high risk or severe risk is low agreement. And again, so the lowest agreement that we see there, firstly, again, a bit of that fear element coming in. The thing that people disagree with most is that employees can report unethical practices without fear of retaliation or victimization. Okay, so from a perspective of us getting to know about unethical conduct, this is a severe concern. Media reports on corruption and are exaggerated and are not an accurate reflection of the public sector. So people saying, again, they disagree. So it is an accurate reflection. Employees are allowed to question the decisions of their superiors. Again, that element of a bit of fear coming into that. Employees are comfortable approaching management with ethical matters or concerns. So a similar thing. So definitely the upward relationship with management is frequently one of fear. People aren't willing to speak up. They're not even willing to discuss ethical matters with their managers. So there's an area that needs a lot of work in terms of speaking to management. Management appreciates employees. People who are honest and responsible are the ones who get ahead in this organization. It's really important that people believe that the ones who are honest and responsible are going to progress in the organization. On the positive, we see there that management expects that employees will do what is right for the public, and ordinary public servants like me can make a difference in building an ethical culture. So that's a very positive one. That public servants aren't totally disillusioned. They still feel that as individuals, they can contribute to a more positive ethical culture. So in terms of ethical culture, we see a very small difference there, a 1% difference, but more positive than 2018. Quite a few percentage points more positive than 2015. All right, so again, a movement in a positive direction, albeit a 1 percentage point for the last year. When we compare the culture elements between unqualified audits and qualified audits, so organizations with unqualified audits, organizations with qualified audits, the thing that is the biggest difference there is that my organization is doing well in terms of service delivery. So that just shows us the strong correlation between organizations with good audit outcomes have better service delivery in the end. So the people who work there believe that their organizations are doing better in service delivery. There's sufficient separation of power between the political and administrative heads of my organization. Okay, so in other words, less political interference. Employees consider the code of conduct when making decisions. The organization always takes action against unethical behavior. Again, the consequence management we see coming in. On reporting misconduct, I just wonder if I have, So on reporting misconduct, so now we're on the ethics management side of things. We said to people, have you observed misconduct personally? 4 out of 10 people just about said that they have observed misconduct. Of those, only 40%. So if you take that, it's about 12 out of 15, let's say 15 out of the 100 people actually report misconduct. So did you report the misconduct? 41 out of the 38% said yes. Why would you not report misconduct? The first thing, people saying, I'm afraid that I may be victimized at work. 51% of people saying that that's a consideration. The other is, I don't believe that any action will be taken about my report. I don't think anything will be 27%, so that's a cluster, said we need to strengthen accountability. And a cluster of 18% said we need ethical and competent leadership. Those are the two things that clustered the most together. So more accountability, and so on the reactive side, but on the proactive side, the ethical and competent leadership being really, really important. We do a root cause analysis, and we say, what is at the bottom of this? The first thing that we say is that inappropriate leadership and management appointments. That's the root cause. If we can't fix that, it's not going to help us to focus more on whistleblowing, because people are in a culture where the leadership is not supportive. It doesn't help that we do ethics training if we don't fix that, because again, it's not going to convince people to do the right thing. We need to start setting the tone at the top. We need to establish our hotlines. Okay, I see we're back there. There's our lifestyle audits. Public servants are willing to play their part. 89% of people said, yes, I went back and checked the data to make sure that we're right and we're right. That I'm not getting this the wrong way around, but I double checked it, it's right. Okay, so the analysis by gender, as the High Commissioner said, for the first time, we analyzed by gender as well, and we did a separate gender report. And there's some interesting things there. Female respondents overall think that misconduct occurs more frequently in their organization, so they're more aware of misconduct. Females seem to be ethically more sensitive than males. I know I don't want to be sexist about this, it just is what the data says. Female respondents are, however, significantly less aware of a hotline. Additionally, female respondents show less trust in the hotline than male respondents. So we need to build trust. Maybe female respondents are more sensitive to pressure, to being manipulated, to the negatives. Male respondents might have, too much testosterone at some points and don't realize the risk. But yeah, so those are the issues that are there on that side. In terms of sexual harassment, that's obviously what we wanted to know. How do males and females view that differently? Male respondents are probably less sensitive, so they observe less sexual harassment than by 7 percentage points, less sextortion than females by 4 percentage points, and are more positive that sexual offenses are taken seriously by the organization, again by 7 percentage points. So females do experience it more, are more sensitive to it, and also feel that the organizations can be doing more in terms of addressing sexual harassment and sextortion. All right, this is now the root cause analysis, starting with inappropriate leadership and management. If you have inappropriate leaders and management, what might happen is that you are going to see an abuse of authority. So in other words, managers are being crude and rude and not doing or not trusting their employees, and then you're going to see a culture of fear setting in the organization. Once you've got that, people are going to disengage from their work, okay? And you're going to start seeing more and more counterproductive employee behaviors. Then you're going to see a lack of accountability because no one cares that we've got these counterproductive employee behaviors, and the managers that are there aren't necessarily taking it seriously, which means that we start seeing an unprofessional culture. And then again, from that, the leadership and management appointments, we attract the wrong people perhaps and the like. So firstly, we need to fix that. And that's why we're saying, if we are going to do just one thing in this, and DG, I don't know who has the power to bring about this change and whether it's something you can promote, but we need to review the appointment process of top managers to ensure that stable, capable, and ethical leadership. We probably need legislative change. It's not a short-term thing, but we have to start the process somewhere. Like I said, the National Development Plan makes this point very clearly. So already there, it's been analyzed. The professionalization framework makes the point. The National Anti-Corruption Strategy makes the point. I think it's time that we start acting on that and improving the professionalism in the public sector for all those public servants who are there, who are willing to do their part and are waiting for the leadership climate as well to set in. Colleagues, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chris. Can we give Chris a Batupele clap, colleagues? Thank you so much for such informative presentation. I think on top of your presentation, let's also add a radar to say currently, as it is in public service, we have regulations and laws which informs the appointment of senior managers. If we review the appointment process, will that change what is happening? Because the law is there, the regulations are there, the processes are there, but yet things are still not according to plan. I think it's something also that we need to ponder upon to say, just reviewing the regulations, will it really assist? Or is it a human factor that contributes to where we are? We'll open the floor now, colleagues, for comments and questions on the presentation. Comments, colleagues? Inputs on the presentation?
Colleagues, taking our discussion further from earlier, any questions, comments, things that you have as takeaways for yourselves? See, we have a hand there and one at the back. I'll stand here.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Pitsi Moloto from the Department of Planning, Monitoring, and Evaluation. My concern is around the last statement that you made regarding the appointment of top senior leadership in the organizations. I think this is a very serious problem because now in government, most of the departments, they don't have director generals. So in that case, how will the tone be set in that kind of an environment? Because acting DGs, they don't feel like they have the power. They only work according to their superiors' interests. So I think that is the problem that maybe we should discuss, because ethical culture starts from the top to bottom.
Yep.
If everything is bad at the top, then what will happen at the ground?
Yep.
So disasters are going to happen, problems are going to persist. We're going to have serious problems, even in terms of designing organizational structures. I can tell you that I'm a chief risk officer in the DPME, but I'm responsible for many things, 5 things which I'm not actually specialist in those areas. So what justice am I doing in those kind of roles? I think this is a very serious thing that we need to start engaging on, and design. When we design the structures, we consider what is important other than just filling the post. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And if I can just respond to that, an analysis was done about directors general in departments. And under the previous administration, there was a change of DG. On average, a department kept a DG something like 2.4 years, 2 years, something like that. So in other words, if our CEO was to change, we're a small organization, was to change every 2 years, there would be no stability, no growth, no strategic objectives. We wouldn't be able to function. Now, you've got large organizations where we're trying to do the same thing and lead from the top, etc., with acting people. So it's people are acting, they're changing. What the recommendations are saying is not only that we should appoint directors general through a more externally managed process or a more objectively managed process, but also that directors general should have more security of tenure. So their career incidents like discipline management and the like should also happen through objective means. In other words, you can't just get rid of a DG that you don't like anymore or something like that. Perhaps longer tenure, perhaps a 7-year tenure or something like that, or tenure. is what people are saying. So definitely on the cards. And then in terms of capacitation, and I have a lot of respect for a lot of you who are given this task of ethics management, additionally to what you are currently doing. And like Solomon said, they're aware that that is a challenge. So in the interim, come with us on the journey, but in the longer term, clearly people need to be appointed into those positions. It's a very important function.
Thank you. Banseke Molatwa from Northern Cape. You're talking about people being appointed to higher position without qualifications. Now the challenge becomes they are young people. They'll be there for 15 to 10 years. Therefore, how do you deal with, improving the ethical culture and them up there being afraid of those below who are qualified, and therefore, trying to silence them? Therefore, it says that for a very long time, until they are out of the system, then you have the same thing, and you are not going to correct the ethical culture that we want to have.
It's a tough one. I think what you're referring to is people who are in the system, who shouldn't be in the system. How do we deal with that? Sometimes they're in senior positions. And that is where performance management and discipline management comes in. But you can't obviously have that if you don't have a competent, qualified, ethical, and someone who's good at management, who's at the head of the organization. So it has to, unfortunately, unless we can say, okay, let's pay them off for something, but I don't think we have budget for that. Okay, so it is performance management and consequence management. It's the only way, and promoting more people who are qualified into those positions. Is there more?
Chris.
Hi.
Thank you for a very insightful presentation and results. I'm always caught between a rock and hard place when I ask this question. There's surveys that are done every 3 years, every year, whatever the case may be. What I want to know is these findings that have not been positive, what interventions are going to be put in place, and at what point are those interventions going to be assessed to see whether they were appropriate or whether they were working? Because I would think if the numbers changed or did not change in whichever direction, we shouldn't just be continuing these surveys without addressing them. And I know maybe some of that will not be easy. It's not something you could do immediately, but remember, you do the survey every 3 years. So whatever interventions would have been put in place, it would be nice to see what worked and what didn't, and the ones that didn't work, why didn't it work? And, we do this root cause analysis. And the second thing is the program director spoke about having legislation and policies there. And she hit the nail on the head when she said, are we going to go and review policies without assessing whether those policies are being complied with? Because the fact is that these are not being complied with. I'm sure the legislation talks about filling the DG posts. We've had an acting DG for going on 2 years. So that creates huge instability. And then we talk about the ethical culture. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to bravely, courageously leave that to Solomon to answer. Yeah, I mean, it is in terms of interventions. Again, one should always try and influence as wide a scope as you can. And I think that to me is why I'm quite passionate about the appointment processes. I think it's a critical area that we do need to change. It obviously hasn't changed in a very long time. When did the NDP come out? We've been aware of this for a while. But then other things that change is, and there's a lot of policy issues that are coming in. The ethics officers, simply having ethics officers and ethics committees in place, and we'll talk more about ethics committees tomorrow, is an intervention trying to do things, but we're trying to do so with limited resources. And that is the constraint. So the next step is, how do we get more resources assigned to this, but also how do we get more power assigned to it so that people don't feel victimized? How do we get the whistleblowing structure working, and our investigative accountability structures working? And I know that there's now an accountability framework that Treasury has worked on. That's local government, I think. So, yeah. Colleagues, I think we're running out of time. Oh, he wants to.
Sorry, I just want to respond to the question. And I think there's a question here as well from the minister. But I appreciate the question. I think it's very important because the two things that you mentioned is so important for us to look at whether we move forward. And exactly what you said is what we've done in 2015 and that one needs to do again. Ethics culture, you can only measure every third year. Impact, you're looking at 5 years. So what we do with the implementation part as DPSA, we see what are those things that is highlighted here, like whistleblowing as an issue, ethics committees as an issue, the visibility of ethics officers, that we make projects around. To say, let's speak to the PSC, let's talk to the ACTT, see how one can plug the gap of whistleblowing. Also looking at legislation changes. So it may be a long-term program, but there must be programs around all of these things. The other issue is around management, because a lot of this issues is about poor management and nothing else. So those implementations plans are there. The one that you talk about, the legislation and policies, every 5 years we reflect on whether there's still a need to have, for example, the other remunerative work policy, because maybe we don't need it anymore. So, but that is the things that you, as the hub of the program, manage in terms of the DPSA. But now, while I'm here at the stage, and sorry for coup d'etat now, but I was also thinking myself, you now as the ethics officer, what is your role and responsibility? Not only DPSA, because we're only managing the national big picture. What are you doing in your department where you now have the power to make an impact? And where you need support and assistance, of course, that you will get from us. But for me, there's two things. How do you go from here and relate to your bosses, the senior managers? Here to say, look at this ethics survey. It shows if we have good governance, we won't have issues with corruption and those things. That's your work. So you can already show him that this is the positive thing that I can, the value that I can add as an ethics officer to you, based on the work, the survey that we've done this morning. And there you built a relationship and a trust relationship with the manager to show him that I'm not here just to window dress. Ethics is a serious thing. And the outcome of it is good service delivery. Here you can see it in the survey. So that is the first part of your role. The second part going from here is you've heard, your client said, we want to be the yeast that makes this thing rise. So they're the patty in your hands. You can use them. That is what your client said. So use that goodwill. A lot of them said they want to do lifestyle audits on them. What do? We say, no, the people are afraid of POPIA and that. Yeah, the research tells you that even though they're afraid, they said, take me, I'll be the first one. So that is for you a comfort, I would say. The other thing is be visible. One of the things in the ethics survey is that people don't know the ethics officers. Do you have a list with your addresses and your names and contact numbers on your website where people can contact you? That is something, so that they know who's the ethics officer, who they need to speak to. Then also, this information of today is worth millions, let me tell you, because you must do an ethics strategy Where do you start? You start with a survey, identifying your risks. This is what we've done. So use this to have your ethics strategy speaking to relevant things in your department. You don't need to go out and get expensive consultants to do this for you. It's done. Use it. You can tweak it because you know your department. You know which areas you cover. If you're one of the departments that still maybe have a problem around gifts, then address that. But this is a good platform from where you can move. So I think that was my takeaway from this side. And then to end with, you now know what the issues are as well. You've seen the issues highlighted. Please give us also input. Tell us, do this, do that. We're open for that. You can make suggestions. And I think throughout this 2 days, you can give us those inputs, but afterwards, you know all of our addresses, cell phone numbers, and so drop us a mail, drop us a WhatsApp. I received numerous WhatsApps now, people saying we're offline, what now? So use it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me appreciate the presentation which you have made. It's been well articulated and detailed. From Malawi, I just wanted to share what we have learned as a team. First thing being the issue of protection of the officers. In Malawi, I don't think the Office of the Director of Public Officers Declaration has that much protection. But I'm afraid that they also handle declarations for the politically exposed, including the president. So unlike here, where the DPSA only handles for public servants, in Malawi, we have that independent body called the Office of the Director of Public Officers Declarations, which handles declarations for everyone, including the president. But if you look at maybe the protection that is there, it's minimal. And as a chair of the monitoring committee of Audiport, I feel we need to do more on that one because it's really risky. And if you go in the website of Audiport, you see that there is a list of declarations for all public officers, for all political exposed, including the president. So it's not that easy and they really need our protection. The second thing I've learned is the issue of having, the top leadership willing to do or to act ethically. And as Malawi, what we do is when people are appointed in government in big positions like the DG here, even my colleagues from the Audiport that I'm here with, if the president appoints anyone in a position which he feels fit, they go through my committee, which is called Public Appointments Committee, and we scrutinize if the person is really right. There are cases where we have returned back the appointments or declined and said, Mr. President, this is not the right person, because we are also looking at people that will make sure that they will help us in the fight against corruption. So if you feel that there are threats or it's a politically influenced appointment, we say no, because that's not what we want. And lastly, we have also linked the issue of sensitization programs for the officers. I'm glad to be part of this, gathering this morning. It's the first of its kind that I've attended, and in Malawi, we have never done something like this. So I feel this is really important so that the officers themselves have to be, trained. And I believe that if we do that, they have to be trained, they have to share experiences, they need to, come together and say, yes, here we are doing fine, the law says this, but what if we improve in these areas? And, I believe that if we do that, we are going to strengthen the whole process, and then we are going to see the fruits. Finally, just to say that it's unfortunate there are some other DGs in various government institutions that maybe don't have that ethical culture. I'll give an example. This month, a former Anti-Corruption Bureau Director General has been arrested on corruption charges. So you see how dangerous is it, or how some people are very unethical, but they're heading institutions that are supposed to be ethical. So I know that we have a lot of work to do as Parliament when it comes to confirmation of people that are heading these institutions, so that we make sure that they follow this ethical culture. And maybe even during we are going to incorporate it. I was just thinking when I was here, because we are introducing what we call performance-based salary, increments and, revisions of service, conditions of service, including the judiciary, because my committee does that. So we'll make sure that we incorporate these issues in the performance appraisals, so that we see that if this department is performing ethically and we don't have issues of corruption or whatever in that department, then the DG can deserve an increment. Otherwise, they forget about it. Thank you.
I'm not sure how time is and how strict we are on time, if we want to.
Can take one question
and then I'd be happy to take other questions after, if you want to chat to me. But I think we should also move on.
Good morning to the delegation and good morning to colleagues. My name is Raymond Mohan. Chris, I think you've touched on an issue regarding the fact of moving from delegated powers in regards to ethics office to appointment. I think we need to look at that and look at professionalizing this process. And I think whilst we also talk about a state that we want to professionalize, and I think I picked up on issues where colleagues touch on the fact that people that are lower down have higher qualifications as opposed to others, and I think there needs to be a strategy regarding a turnaround to deal with that. But I think also the National School of Governance do provide various courses and training that even senior managers and staff within the organizations need to look at. One is the program regarding the ethics training. The other one I would think very simply is the one regarding risk management that is run by the Office of the Accountant General. So those are areas that can be looked at so that we can look at improving. But I think also to just take from what you've indicated, when you looked at that 89% of people that said that they would like to be having a lifestyle audit or review done on them, it then begs the point of saying that in your first part of your survey, you indicated that many people were saying that consequence management is not managed well. So I'm going to take the token to say that those people put up their hands to meet compliance because they know that if something goes wrong, nothing's going to happen to them. Thank you.
I don't frequently meet people who are more cynical than me, but yeah, I think there were comments. I'm not sure that there's anything to respond to. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, I think there's, if we can, the minister, we were at a launch yesterday of the Local Government Ethical Leadership Initiative and the Local Government Anti-Corruption Forum, and the minister talked about discipline and about being on time and following our program and schedule on time, which impressed us a lot. And the minister was half an hour early and the program finished early. So yeah, let's try and emulate that today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Unfortunately, colleagues, I will have to end here with the questions with only one exception. I'm only going to take a hand from the delegate from Malawi, just for them to contribute on how are they doing things in addition to what the minister has indicated. My apologies, colleagues. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll be very quick. Thank you for the presentation, Chris, and through the high table. We have, just to put it in context, we have what we call declaration desk officers who are based in institutions and are not mandated by law, but it's an administrative arrangement for them to collect declarations from these institutions. Now, the colleague earlier on mentioned that they do face challenges in terms of compliance, and one can end up feeling left out or being the outcast because they're trying to implement their duties. What I would like to know, and we're here to learn, so from the diverse group that is here, if you can tell us at some point, not now perhaps, but how are you managing such instances? Because even our DDOs are afraid to go to their bosses and request for declarations. So how are you dealing with it? How can we go about it? How can we address that challenge? Are there strategies? Are there policies, or is there a collective that at least stands together and says, well, we're going to go ahead and ensure compliance? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the contribution. Dr. Solomon, you'll add on the response. Currently, we have the Protected Disclosures Act in South Africa. That is what we base our policies on how we get the information, and also it informs our whistleblowing policies. So different departments will utilize that Protected Disclosures Act to inform their whistleblowing policy. Be it as it may be, there's still those type of fear from colleagues where they are saying they don't feel protected, as they have indicated, because there are many attributing factors which influence how are you protected as an individual within the department. Firstly, it depends on the type of leadership in that department. Do they buy into the issues of ethics, or as the indication by the minister as an example, are they on the other part where now they don't support any compliance of any sort, meaning that you will always be victimized even if when you try to do your work. So, but I'll hand over to Dr. Solomon to can add.
With us, what the good thing is, I thought my voice will carry, but I forgot about the people at home. No, I think the good thing that we have in terms of our setup is that in terms of legislation, you need to disclose. If you don't disclose, you get into trouble. So, and that is, we're very serious on that. If you as the head of a department do not disclose, you get a letter of non-compliance. And in terms of the disciplinary code, the minister can take action against you as the HOD then, who didn't disclose. So far, Pleasure, you can correct me, I don't think we had one case where HOD were reprimanded. But then we also have other measures of pressure when, for example, our DG goes to the FOSAT, which is the Forum of South African DGs. Then they take it up and discuss it there and say that these departments are not compliant, and DG also will probably have a courteous discussion with the other HOD to say, please, we're only waiting for your one. So we really don't have that issue because it's compliance, it's legislative driven, and that helps a lot.
Thank you so much, Chris and colleagues, for this informative deliberations. Give yourself Batupile clap. Thank you, well done. On that note, I'll hand over to our DG, Ms. Yolisa, to do the closing remarks. Over to you, DG.
Thank you, Dumi. Good morning, colleagues. Can I write and say, Minister, you are welcome once more in South Africa with your delegation and all protocol observed. I know that in diplomatic circles, they say there's nothing like all protocol observed, but we use that in South Africa anyway. Professor, thank you so much. And everyone in the team, Dr. Solomon and your team, I think that you've done a great job, guys. So I was thinking how initially I had said to Dr. Solomon, I'll do a response. And then, so he has given me permission to just reflect a little bit as part of the concluding remarks. And so I've been picking up on the contributions because my interest is to hear what you guys say around these findings and how do we turn things around in the public service. You are part of the leadership in the public service, by the way. I hear some of you talking about leaders as if it's people who are sitting there. We are all leaders. I subscribe to a school of thought that says we're all leaders. We just have different roles and responsibility. So we cannot think about leadership only from a point of position or just, and we have this tendency in the public service to think that leaders are politicians or leaders are DGs. We're all leaders. We all have leadership responsibilities in different roles that we're playing in our lives, in and outside of the public service. If you think about leadership broadly as a concept around decision-making, resource allocation, and etc., you think about the lady who is a cleaner in your office, who has a responsibility, or the gentleman who is a messenger in your office, who has a responsibility to run a household out of a salary of, I don't know how much level 2 or 3 ends, but out of that salary, which is very low, and they have to take children to school, they have to run household, they have to take decisions that ensure that there's continuity of life and take care of people. That is leadership. So I don't want us to think about leadership only as positions, because I think we self-limit ourselves and our capabilities and what we can do, because you are the people on the ground who are having experiences, who are engaging with whatever situations, and solutions are within you. They are not with somebody else. So whilst you expect DPSA to do certain things which we should do, you should help us to think around those issues and craft them so that there is a, when we say we will be doing this, it's not just people at head office at DPSA who do not know much of what's happening on the ground, but it's you who are on the ground who know exactly what's happening on the ground. I've also heard colleagues talking about setting the leadership tone right, and I agree with it. And I want us to think about the leadership tone as not just being on top, but being everywhere. Because even if the leadership tone is right, if everywhere there's a challenge, it's still, there's a high level of misalignment, and there's a big push of resistance to change, which sometimes even the leadership that is at the top may be overwhelmed in terms of dealing with that particular resistance. So we must think about all of us as leaders and all of us contributing in achieving certain objectives that we must achieve. We are fighting corruption in South Africa in the public service because we want to ensure that resources that are meant to improve the lives of people are used exactly for that. They don't go into private and individual pockets and do other things, but those resources, they go straight to improving the lives of people. So we are people-oriented. Our business is about people, that we must contribute towards improving their lives. It's not about us serving ourselves. I think sometimes as public servants, we get so obsessed and so involved in what we view as our challenges as employees in the public service at the expense of the bigger role and responsibilities that we're expected to deliver on. So yes, I agree, we must lead by example as leaders, and leaders across different levels in the public service and across different responsibilities in the public service. Now there's this issue around qualifications and this and that. The only thing I want to say about this is that what I've learned in the work that we do in anti-corruption is that qualifications do not guarantee that a person is ethical. That's why today we have people who are CFOs, who have occupied critical roles in SOCs, who qualified, by the way, who are appearing in courts. People who are heads of departments who qualify for their positions but appearing in courts, because there is no link, at least I haven't found a link that says because you have the qualifications, therefore you are ethical. But the point you raise around professionalization of the public service is very important. But also even on professionalization, colleagues, professionalization is not an event. You're not going to be called here and we say, now we can professionalize. No, we are expected to be professional. We don't have to wait for something. We don't have to wait for the framework. The framework is just putting things together and improving on what is already in the system. There is a code of ethics for public service. There is our constitution. Chapter 10 is very clear about values and this and this. So we should not wait for an event to happen before we conduct ourselves in a manner that the code of ethics or the code of conduct requires, in a manner that the constitution requires us to conduct ourselves. We shouldn't be waiting for something to happen that's gonna ensure that we do these things. So it's my own experience, and I was sitting here reflecting on, you know, being a DG of a department and how it can be a thankless job and how everybody will not know that it's a thankless job, because I guess you think we're all happy and chilled and occupying the top seat. But it can be such a thankless job. And I have actually experienced this in the past few years, especially last year, that if you are a public servant, whether you're a DG or not, I've experienced this twice in my career. Firstly, there's a department I worked at which I was suspended, and I spent like 8 months at home. I was a DDG in that department, but I was suspended because I had a voice and I said no to things that I probably was not expected to say no to, because the minister wanted it. The minister wants to appoint somebody who doesn't qualify. Therefore, as DDG corporate, I'm expected to sign. So I'm like, no, I can't. I can't, because the handbook is clear on how we appoint people, and this particular person does not qualify. And I mean, I'm thinking like, it's not even like not qualify, like say appoint somebody who's a director who does not have metric. And I'm saying not have metric because this lady failed to provide a metric certificate. I waited and waited for the metric certificate and it never came. And then she said it had gone with the floods and other things I don't understand. But but my point was I can't. And I can't do it. I'm sorry, Minister, I can't do it. I wrote a submission. So those who work with me know that I believe in submissions. They'll tell you, Dr. Solomon will tell you, because for me, that source of authority is very important. And you must have a reference point. And this is what I learned in public administration 101, have a reference point. So submissions are part of my reference point. So fortunately, I wrote a submission to the DG and I said, DG, I can't sign this. Yes, you've delegated me appointments, but I can't sign this. These are my concerns. And then there's a submission that came back from the minister saying, I am the only minister here, do as I demand. So I said, unfortunately, I can't, minister. These are the options you have. If you want to continue with this appointment, you will have to write to the Minister for Public Service and Administration to ask for a deviation. From my side, I have no authority to do it. But to cut a long story short, I found myself what I call outside leadership. It was just a number of issues, but I found myself outside the department and fighting for like 8 to 9 months in respect to this particular issue. But the lesson learned for me was that you have to find your voice and you have to stick with it. And you have to be comfortable with it, because if you are not, if you are in the public service to please everybody, you're gonna have challenges. So I think you guys, you find yourselves a lot in that situation because of the roles that you are doing around ethics and etc. You have to be very resolute. You have to be settled in where you are. Now, being settled in where you are, you need to have the right knowledge. It's important that, because what gives you comfort to be settled? When I say to you, I've found my voice, it's because I'm comfortable that from a knowledge point of view, I am comfortable with the knowledge that I'm exposed to and the things that I know. Be it qualifications, be it experience, and the combination of all those things. But also there's something about your inner self and the inner work that you need to do in yourself, that there will be times when you are not liked. So how many of us can survive when we are not liked in the environments that we work in. How many of you can survive? Because some of us rely a lot on external validation. You want people to like you, to praise you. So at DPSA, I've gone through a process of being extremely disliked for this or that reason. And this is not against any colleague who's here. I'm just sharing broadly what I've experienced last year, particularly the past 6 months of the year. Last year, I went through a process of being extremely disliked, and it taught me a number of things. And fortunately for me, I have a training as a coach as well. So I have a little bit of tools around that I can juggle with when I'm in a corner in terms of my own self-awareness and consciousness and etc. But one of the important things that I resolved was, or I proved actually to myself, is that you can do this job even if you are not liked. It's easier when you are liked, because when you are liked, you get support easily. But when you are not liked, support does not come easily. But still, the work must be done because we are here to work, not to be liked. But if the two combine like this, it makes life very easy for you. So I'm sharing this to you because I suspect that many of you, because of the role you are playing, you find yourselves in a corner where the DG is not going to agree with you, where your manager is not going to agree you, because ethics, the work that you do, ethics, risk and all things, is very sensitive work. And sometimes you have to turn against people who think that you are their allies or you are loyal to them, or people who believe they recruited you into the system and you can't turn against them. So so my advice is just don't forget that self-empowerment. Don't forget to always chase the knowledge, which is why we always do these programs, and we also do an update and training and etc. from a learning perspective. But also don't forget to build your own personal reserves. Don't forget to take care of self, to make sure that self can survive, because you need self to be able to survive to do the work that you are doing. So that balance is very important for me. And critical to this is values. Our constitution is very clear about values of public administration. I don't want to repeat them because I think you know them. And if you, for any reason, you don't know them or you don't want to remind yourself, please remind yourselves, go to chapter 10 of the constitution, understand what the values, and ask yourself a question, how are you aligned to these values? Because each and every one of us as public servants, we need to have that alignment. If we don't have that alignment, it's a problem. But how do we assist ourselves and those that we recruit into the public service with that alignment? I think, Prof, this is for me a very big space that we need to work on. Yes, I know there's courses at NSG, there's this, but I think we need to do more than courses. The type of conversations that we have, the type of regulations that we have in the public service, the type of discipline management environment that we have, the type of labor relations architecture that we have. Our labor relations architecture is so aggressive in its approach that there is no space to integrate values in dealing with how we relate with each other and how we live with each other in the organization. So each one of us is rushing to go and declare dispute or declare grievance and etc. So if we talk about an ethical culture, it's not just gonna happen. There are certain things that we need to do to change the environment that we're in, to change the culture that we're in. And yes, it does start with us, but it cannot only depend on us as individuals only. The environment, the organizations that we work in must be supportive enough for that change. Issues around consequences management. I can tell you why people don't do consequences management. It's because they are scared of unions. No, they are. Fortunately, I'm not scared of unions. No, I'm not. In fact, I've developed a thick skin. I mean, people have sworn, I don't know how to say it in English. They've been swearing at me. They've been writing letters to ministers complaining about me, trumping up charges and all these things, trumping up allegations and all these things. So, but one thing I've heard again, as I say, I've gone through a journey, is that I've learned to understand that we all have different agendas and each one is pushing their agenda. But I have seen managers in departments, including my department, constrained because you are a manager, maybe a DDG or a chief director or a director. You are not a member of the union during the day. And you have a right, by the way, to be a member of the union. So I don't know why you're not a member of the union if you want, but you work with the union to address your issues in a manner sometimes that is inappropriate. Which is not a problem, it's your choice. But now when you have to discipline, because part of your role and responsibility as a manager is about leadership and consequences management, you get constrained because of how you relate with people and how you relate with unions and etc. So there's a lot of dishonesty amongst us as managers. And it compromises us when we have to play certain roles and responsibilities that were required in law to play. And other people are just scared, the absence of courage, the absence of resilience. So people are just scared to be targeted and chased by the unions and etc. So there is an issue around how we engage and what role does labor. And I'm not saying labor unions are wrong, guys. Don't hear me badly. I've experienced them in a good way and in a bad way. When I was suspended, and I always said that I am a product of workers' struggles, and I used the laws of the country to get me back to my job because the workers fought for me. So there's no way I'm saying that labor is wrong in what they do, but I'm just saying how at times we engage is very important. And so there's lots of people are scared basically. And my own experience with fear is that it doesn't matter. And I always say this in the department, there is so many, like our public service is so progressive in South Africa. Literally, I don't know why you should be scared of being victimized by anybody. Because the nature of our architecture of the public service is very good, actually. I think it's quite protecting to people. But also fear is a personal thing, and origination of fear, there are people who are just scared because they are scared. And nobody is going to help that because the fear is so embedded in their lives out of how they've been exposed to life and etc. But there are also people who are fearing victimization because they've seen cases of victimization and they've seen managers and leaders who have not acted appropriately when they've had to deal with these particular issues. Lastly, so I've spoken about, then there's the issues of course, political interference. And I've made peace in jobs that we do in the public service. And I hear my colleagues talking about depoliticize the public service. I don't know how we are going to do it. I don't know how. For me, professionalization does not equate to depoliticizing the public service. Because for you to depoliticize the public service, you'll have to remove people out of the public service. Not just politicians, everybody. Because public policy, at the heart of public policy is politicians. And at the heart of the work that we do as public service is implementing public policy, designing public policy and implementing public policy. So how we are going to separate politics, I don't know. But what I know is that we need maturity of professionalized public servants who can be able to navigate the very tricky space, because it is quite a tricky space, but it's a space that we need to navigate in a very tactical manner. And lastly, the other reason is, well, there's many reasons, but I'm just going to highlight a few. The other reasons is the political administrative interface. So if you have never been in a department where there's a minister and a DG who do not see eye to eye, you have not experienced life in the public service. Seriously, because when a minister and a DG do not see eye to eye, it could be the minister who's wrong, it could be the DG, it could be both of them. In fact, they could be right, both of them, because maybe they don't have to see eye to eye, but they just have to be cordial to work together and deliver on their work. Because you as employees get drawn in. Instead of reporting to DG, you report to the minister. And when the minister calls you or MEC, you can't say, no, MEC, I can't come because I report to the DG. But if you have a DG who's immature and HOD who's immature, the moment they hear that you were in the minister's office or MEC's office, kuzoba bad. So fortunately in my life, I always say I have experienced all the worlds. I have had ministers, I've worked very well with them, who I think liked and supported me, who I also liked and supported them. I think I've also had ministers whom it just didn't gel. We really didn't work together for this or that reason, but I always, and I've learned this again, I've been in the public service for so long, I've learned this, that I am a professional. And no matter what's happening, I must always remember the reason I'm here is to serve, and I must not be defocused. Even when I disagree with the minister, even when I disagree with a colleague about this or that, the work must continue. The organization must not collapse because I am having a problem or I am as a leader of the organization now from a positional point of view. So all I can say to you colleagues, and I'd like to spend more time with you in future, but all I'd like to say to you is that remember that you matter and your contribution is important. DPSA is not going to do anything in your department without you to support you in the work that you're doing. And indeed, this work should not be designated work. This work should be integrated in the structure, and there's conversations that we're having around that. And I'm quite happy to have this opportunity to engage. I hope we will engage again. I am still interested to hear a lot of things from you about how you think we can change and improve our contribution to the ethical culture and the ethical conduct in the public service. And I agree with Prof that ethical management, the ethical infrastructure that you have will not guarantee you that there's going to be a better and improved ethical culture. There are certain things that must happen. And I think you know those things better because you're on the ground. Thank you very much. And thank you, Ethics Institute, for this. I think that even though you are thanking us for our contribution, I don't think we'll be here without your support and without the leading role that you've been playing in terms of the ethics surveys. I was telling Chris earlier on that when I was doing my academic project a few years ago, I quoted a lot on the work that is done by Ethics Institute because it resonated with the subject that I was researching on at that particular time. And thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you very much, DG. Can we give the DG Batopili clap, colleagues? Thank you, colleagues. Now we are going to break for tea. We are a few minutes outside our time as per the program. I'm going to request your cooperation so that we can back on track. We can get back on track and be able to cover all the items that we have to discuss today. Before we break for tea, I'm going to hand over to Dr. Solomon to give the token of appreciation to the presenters. It's not a gift, colleagues. It's Dr. Solomon is utilizing the right word. It's a sponsorship to say thank you. Over to you, Dr. Solomon.
Okay, thank you. I think before we break for lunch or for tea, sorry, let us first then hand over the tokens of appreciation. The first person I would like to call is DG.
Oh. I will declare now to do me.
Thanks, DG. Thank you so much. Minister Then Prof. Rousseau. Then this one is to Chris Dobie. Thank you so much for the outlining of the report. Thank you. And then also for the Canadian representative, Ms. Musa. No, I'm a worker.
Colleagues, now let's agree on the time frames. We have to break for tea. I would propose that we supposed to break for 20 minutes. Can we negotiate and make it less than that, 13 minutes, and be back at 11:30? You can bring your tea here. We can have a working tea. I believe we are ethical. By 11:30, we'll all be seated. Thank you, colleagues. All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
you so much. I just want to spend a bit of time with you guys. I want to